on Heads Up as we focus on all those with their own challenges, be it learning challenges or physical challenges. Today, we're asking differently abled, can we give them the sensitivity they need? Well, joining me now, Sujit Panagrahi, also founder and CEO of Fitness 365. They're behind physical education programs for schools. Also with me, Ilona Dam, Delhi University's Kamla Nehru College. Thanks both so much for being with us. Sujit is someone who's involved in physical education, and that is where a lot of children with special needs would invariably take backseat. Have you found in the last couple of years your experience saying that schools are now, especially the top ones, more open to integrating these kind of students?
Yeah, see, we work with the schools, all kinds, whether it is in the cities or in rural India. We find that the children in rural India, they play a lot of sports. So that's one thing. If you look at the urban children, they don't play a lot of sports, but the schools have a lot of focus on physical education. Because the values that you learn out of physical education are all life skills.
Right.
Teamwork, respect, leadership and all that. So that's one aspect. The other thing is fitness. And what we see that the schools are increasingly using physical education and sports to integrate children of all types, whether they're playing well or not. I want to give an example of a child who was so scared of climbing trees. It took us about 4 days to build in that into his system, saying that he can climb a tree. Then a lot of other children also started doing that. That's something which is very fundamental, that how do you use sports and physical education to get children of all types, whether they are physically handicapped or children who are intellectually also handicapped. There are a lot of children, you can actually get them into this thing.
So you're saying that you've seen there's a change, you've seen the schools that perhaps going that extra mile or trying that extra bit to try and integrate these students. Ilona, you have 1 minute to explain why you don't really agree.
See, I basically don't agree is because, firstly, I would like to point out a very fundamental fact here, that most schools, public or private, are not actually enrolling and admitting these differently abled children. And this is something which is my personal experience. I've seen many people being denied admission in these schools. And even if these admissions are taking place, there is no intention on the part of the schools to, actually take them in and try and make them part of the mainstream when they grow up. Because theirs is a very half-hearted or intention that we have to take just because the law says so, because we have to do this, because there is a quota. There is no, heartly intention which the schools or the administrations are trying to show, and I'm talking about maximum schools here in Delhi, that we have to, go ahead and give them a future, secured future as they deserve, just as the so-called normal kids do. So I completely, disagree with sir.
Right. Sujit, would you say that it's just lip service that schools are still doing, even in this day and age when there's been focus, we're talking about getting laws in place, there's so much awareness. Do you think this, Ilona's point is that there's more to this than meets the eye and it's basically lip service? What would you say in your experience?
Not really. I think if you look at it, the last 70 years, I was looking at the WHO report also, almost 1.8% children they are physically or intellectually challenged children. Roughly around 8% families have a differently abled child in the family. But if you look at the current whether you look at it as a top-down approach from the government's point of view, 2011 and 12 is when a draft bill has been placed before the parliament, which is completely focused on differently abled persons, all age groups. So that's something that the government is doing. Secondly, government is also trying to get the private players. There are a lot of innovations happening, whether it is in the technology space or curriculum development or the teacher training, which is happening. And how do you train an existing teacher to be friendly to a differently abled child? That's something which is happening on the ground. And that's very important. And the other thing is that what is being seen in India, the expectations which are being set for differently able children is lower than for other children. But when you look at it as a Western culture, you see that the expectations from all children, whether it is normal or intellectually
more realistic.
They're more realistic and they're much more higher because the higher expectation that you set, you achieve better. So the outcomes are better that way. And what I'm seeing in the schools in India, they are actually working towards that.
They're working towards that. And you're saying there's a genuine effort.
There's a genuine effort from the government side as well as from the different institutions.
Right. Ilona, I know that you disagree, but if I come back to my topic, which is around the sensitivity, that being the other problem, that it's not just, if schools are one factor, there's society also, which does not treat them with the sensitivity that they need? Many of them can go on to being top achievers. I mean, it's often cliches to be told how some big names in the world had all sorts of learning disabilities or other challenges. But somehow there's no sensitivity, especially in a country like ours.
Yeah, definitely. See, I'm going to give you a very root example for this. When a parent he knows he has a differently abled child, thousands of relatives are going to suddenly crowd around him and say, oh, isko to special school bhej do bhai, he doesn't have a future, and etc. etc. This is the ideology and the mentality which is still prevailing in India, in the Indian society. So, you know, if
And you don't even have enough of those special schools. Or
definitely,
those
definitely.
skilled teachers.
We don't
that
have
being
these
the other
schools
problem.
in you know places like Himachal Pradesh, etc. We have them in Delhi definitely, but not in the remote parts of India. And you know, if you have this special school mentality, okay, this child XYZ is not made for normal schools. He's made for a special school. You're already segregating that child from the mainstream. So this is happening at a very ground level. From the childhood itself, the kid is being trained to understand that, listen, you're not part of the mainstream, you're just a sidey and you don't have a future at all. So this is the situation of the society right now. So what sensitivity can only come when we accept the fact, and you know, as the West does, as Sir said, that you have to you know, understand with a lot of reality that this child is capable of doing everything which another XYZ child can, and as
With just the right amount of focus. So coming back to your point about the different schools, of course, there's the other argument is that can a so-called regular school really be equipped, and how far should they be equipped to handle these learning challenges or, you know, these differences in their students? It's okay for them to handle students with some differences, but just how much can they go, you know, how much are they expected to know? How much are they expected to be prepared? How much can their teachers know? Which is why special schools, the case is made for special schools, that there's a reason to have them in an atmosphere. That, of course, is a debate for another day. But again, coming back to the sensitivity, if you just focus around sports and, you know, your expertise, do you see that there are other students around who are perhaps interacting with these students, you know, who perhaps have special needs, who are also aware and sensitive to what they might need?
See, it's basically about whether you actually create two different categories or you put them together.
Right.
Because if you put them together, then they are like normal children.
Right.
And every child, if you look
But
at
is that practical, Sujit?
it is practical
It
in the
is,
sense,
okay,
yeah, there are some schools, without taking any names, in
Right.
Gurgaon I've seen, in Delhi I've seen, where what happens is that if the focus is on finishing and not on winning,
Right.
a lot of things change.
Right.
So if you have a sports tournament and you have 20 people running, 20 children learning, you wait for the last child to reach the
Right.
milestone. That is a huge achievement for the parents and also for the child.
Right.
And so winning is not really very important. What is important is inclusion of every child.
But that's a radical change for India as a society also, Sujit.
Yeah, that's
don't you agree?
right. I
Because
mean-
so far we've always been sort of, generations have been taught to believe that the winner takes it all.
Right.
Now you're saying that, you know, when you wait for the child who is the slowest to catch up
Right.
and also finish,
Right.
then it's
So-
remarkable.
Yeah, it's, I think, about building that awareness. It's basically also whether you want, if you are building the school teams, you can build school teams around with different capabilities. You can have special Olympics. I mean, that's one thing. Or you can have them in the normal events also.
Right.
And there are schools which are doing that. And if you also look at it from the government's point of view, the Special Olympics is also going to be in February in Delhi. And this is the first time that that is also being done, and by the Ministry of Social Justice and Sports, which I think is a huge step. I mean, for any country to be progressing, to be seen to be progressing,
Right.
sports and technology are two things which
Right.
are
Right.
very important. And so I think whether it is from a government's point of view or from a school's point of view, it's possible that you can actually integrate both of them
Right.
as a mainstream thing.
Right.
I think the intention is very important rather than anything else. Whether you can do it or not, you should have the intention to integrate children of all capabilities.
Right. Ilona, I know that you said that, you know, a lot of what we do for the differently able could just be lip service. But when you hear Sujit talking about his example, do you sort of see that this is something that he's, of course, talking about a few schools, but maybe tomorrow, in the coming years, we can sort of make this more of, you know, a commonality than an exception?
See, actually, Natasha, India is a country of very fixed and very, you know, rigid mindsets. So I don't think it's going to just take 2 years or 3 years to make changes. It'll take around 50, 60 years, I'm pretty
More.
sure, or more, in fact, actually more. Because, you know, to get this thing out of the, you know, uproot this mindset out of the people that as Sir said, that they are children. They are not normal or abnormal.
Right.
This is going to take a lot of time, and it's practically a little impossible right now to think about it.
Right.
It may happen once. Obviously, it may. Positively thinking, but right now it really seems very impossible.
I just want to give an example.
Sure.
One of the bigger problems is about attention span, right? I'm just giving an example. A lot of children have that problem, and it's also considered to be a disorder if the degree is higher. Through sports, what happens is that when you actually engage a child, how do you get a child to respond to you? You just tap on someone's shoulder, the child responds.
Right.
Or you just take his name or
Right.
her name whenever you are doing any activity in a class.
Right.
It's such a simple thing to do. So you know that the other children are actually responding normally, but a particular child is not doing that. All that you need to do is to take his name.
Right.
Right. So these are some very simple techniques which you actually can apply to this, because we actually normally confuse with physical handicap as just one of the major categories. But intellectual disability is also a larger
Right.
category, and you can actually do
And
that
as
through.
much as the challenge, and a large number
That's right.
of in India actually facing
That's
these
right.
challenges. So we don't have an option really but to be prepared. The debate ranges on. Of course, there's a lot more sensitivity that we could show. There's a lot more that we could do beyond just lip service. But as the case has been made with Suchi's experience, perhaps those little seeds of change have been sowed. Watch this space for more as we focus on all those with learning challenges, all sorts of a wide variety of learning challenges and all that they might need. Ilona, Suchi, thanks so much for coming in and speaking to us. We slip into a quick break now. We're back with lots more on the other side. Don't go.